Hey folks, this is Chris at Art Secret Studio. We're in a very beginning painting class. We put in the first day of paint, there's still brush strokes everywhere. And I thought I'd introduce to you that, I use different brushes for different reasons. When it comes time to blend, all of a sudden I change brushes and I'm using a Sable brush. I'm a big Rosemary fan. She makes the world's finest brushes. I hope you enjoy this little clip. It's just did you know kind of sentence that has nothing to do with talent. And that's what our program's about. All the little things that people just don't want to share because one day you're going to be their competition. Folks, you're never going to be my competition. I don't paint for a living. I teach. So my goal is to paint every week, learn something new and share it. Hope you like it. If you do, come to our website and see much more. I just want to help so much. Thank you.
I don't like to use the Sable the first day, but I love it when I'm going back over it. So now I'm going back over it, and it's this animal red Sable hair. And I'm using a bigger brush so it doesn't take so long. For years, I made the class paint with a number 2 Sable brush, which is half this size. And they did a 30 by 40 portrait of a lady in a red dress with a number 2 Sable brush. So I'm gonna start, I'm cleaning the brush off. The Sable brush shares a problem that the Eclipse and Monarch has. When you wipe them off, and wash them in the cleaner, and then you dry it and you think it's fine, in a minute the rest of the fluid starts to come out and it drips on you, and it'll drip on the painting. So I try to finish the sunny sides without cleaning the brush, and then I clean it, and then I do the dark side and I don't clean the brush. I can't use the cleaner all the time. The more I'm using the cleaner, the more it drips, the less control I have. The Eclipse and Monarch are horrible at retaining fluid. I think the Sable does a better job of releasing some of it, and I'm in control. So I'm going to start at the highlight, and I'm going to put in some pure white highlight. And I grab a little bit of an orange color with white in it. Just dab the edges to soften it. I wiped it on the rag. I didn't put it in the cleaner. I'm going to grab some of my orange. Wow, that doesn't look like an apple. So I'm going to go to value 5, and I'm going to cover some of that. So I'm going to start next to it, but I'm going to go right over it and backtrack a little bit and leave just a smidgen of that bright orange. Notice how big my strokes are. I didn't cover the whole thing. I'm not doing bands. I know the bands are there. I'm not painting them. And then I'm going to 6.
So you ignore the band.
But I put the darker color there, and I'm asking myself, do I see it gradually get darker? So I'm painting bands, I'm hiding them. I wipe off my rag on a new spot. See, my paint has blue red on the rag and it has orange red on the rag. I make sure I wipe it off on a clean spot every time because I don't want my brush dirtier than it was before I cleaned it. And if I love what I do, I move the color away from it. If I don't, I put it right next to it, and then I overlap and it takes some of that color away. Now, I want to explain something. So I'm grabbing my Cad Red. Watch how far the brush pushes when I push down. There's my Cad Red, okay? See the brush bending? Now, to blend, as I go up, I'm gonna bend the hair half as much. So the bend's not gonna be as much. So now I'm pressing down. And now as I go higher, I'm gonna bend less. And less, and less, and less. So as I go back, I'm pushing down, I'm watching the bend of the hair of the brush, and it's not bending as much every time I get lighter. Does that make sense? So, and you see how the line disappeared? Yeah, and I don't know if it's half, but I know it's less. Okay, and now that's not to say if I felt like, oh gosh, but this area is not blended enough and I need to press harder the second time to fix the mess. I'm just aware of the bend in the brush is what I'm really saying. Now I did clean the brush, and I have to hope it's dry. And sometimes I'll grab an opaque color, like I know it's orange that I'm going to paint on. And sometimes if I feel like the brush hair is wet, now you have to feel this. You can't watch me. You have to paint. And you're going to recognize when it's wet, but you have to know what to look for. But sometimes when it's wet, and I know, see, it's starting to come out on my hand now. It's been a few minutes and it's starting to drip. Sable brushes retain fluid. That's why they're famous in watercolor. They make long brush strokes in watercolor. They excel at retaining fluid. I can't be mad at the Sable brush. This is what it's for. That's why that Sable died. So sometimes I'll grab an opaque color like Cad Red that I'm going to use, even put it on both sides and wipe it off just to get my brush dry and clean so as it's absorbed the fluid. So I'm going to show you that in a second. So I'm going to re-grab the orange again, and I'm going to start right next to it. And then I'll wipe it off. I'm going to grab my darker color. I'm going to overlap half of that because it was too much. Wipe it off. Go to number 6. Bend less and less. I just want it to look like it's getting darker. Wipe it off. Go to 7. Bend less and less. Only the tip is bending now, not the whole brush. Go to 8. Pressing hard because it's not blended very well there, so I'm going to make it happen. And now I'm going to start touching lighter. So how hard am I touching? Well, when I press down, that's as hard as I'm touching. But by the time I end up, those are my 5 strokes.
So when you're going up that,
I'm literally touching not as hard, not as hard, not as hard, not as hard. Where sometimes I'm just touching the bumps on the canvas.